Hello and welcome back to Cracking the Cryptic. Today we're going to take a look at one of our favourite types of puzzles, one of your favourite types of puzzles, the sandwich Sudoku. Now, those of you new to the channel might not be aware that Mark and I released an app about a month ago now showcasing this puzzle. It featured on release 40 puzzles by us, all handcrafted, and with 5 more puzzles being released each month for the first year after launch, so 100 puzzles in all. And today, or in fact last night, the first update went live. So those of you who finished the first 40 puzzles, and there are a lot of you, which is staggering to us. I mean, the amount of playtime that the app is generating is quite phenomenal. And many of you have finished all 40 of the puzzles, and if you go and check the game out this morning, you'll find 5 new puzzles that we've made for you, a couple of which should tax even the very best solvers out there. So do let us know whether you enjoy those new puzzles. And around the middle of next month, obviously, there'll be 5 new puzzles again. We've also made some changes to the interface for mobile users. Responding to some of your feedback about how you'd like to be able to pencil mark and enter in digits and X's in the grid, etc., we've made some changes there. Now you can keep the current system if you want to, just using the options, or you can go with the new system, which seems to be the one that you've requested. So hopefully that will be a quality of life increase as well. And I thought, as I say, that what we should do therefore is a sandwich Sudoku, and this is one of our sandwich Sudokus. You won't find this one in the app. This is one we've made specially for today, to showcase what this puzzle is all about and why it's been gaining such a lot of popularity. And interestingly, I noticed that in the most recent Puzzler Media Sudoku magazine, which is I think the biggest Sudoku magazine in the UK, they have included 4 sandwich Sudokus in their magazine this month. So it's clearly the puzzle world is waking up to why this puzzle is so interesting. Now, if you want to try the puzzle, if you're already familiar with sandwich Sudoku, you just want to get on with it, then click on the link under the video. It'll take you to our software. You'll see what I'm seeing here. If having done that, and you don't own the app already and you want to have a go at that, then just also under the video you'll find links to all of the versions that are available. So there's a desktop version, an Apple version, and obviously a Google version as well. Now, sandwich Sudoku, how does it work? Well, these numbers outside the grid tell us the sum of the cells sandwiched between the 1 and the 9 in each row and column. And that leads to a lot of quite interesting logic and very much a 2-stage puzzle. So the first stage in any sandwich Sudoku is we need to somehow work out where the 1s and the 9s go. And once we've done that, we'll have more of a sort of killer Sudoku stroke classic Sudoku type puzzle to solve. Now this puzzle is quite difficult. There's only 1 given digit. Now you always have to have 1 given digit in a sandwich Sudoku. If there was no given digits at all, the issue that you'd have there is that the 1s and 9s would be interchangeable, so the puzzle wouldn't be unique. So in order to create a puzzle with a unique solution, you have to have 1 given digit, and that's the minimum, and that's what we've got here. So let's think about how we'd solve it. Now, my main tip for solving sandwich Sudoku is to highlight all of the cells that cannot contain 1s and 9s. So with that in mind, let's have a look at what we can do here. So for example, this 33 row at the bottom, or near the bottom, if we know that cells summing to 33 sit between the 1 and the 9, then 33 plus 1 plus 9 is 42. We know that there must be exactly 1 cell that isn't between the 1 and the 9, and that cell must sum up to 2. Because of course, if we sum up the whole of a row of any Sudoku puzzle, we'll get the number 45, because if you add up the numbers 1 through 9, that's what you get. So here we know that the 1 or the 9 is either in this cell and here, that's one possible configuration, or here and here. Now the important thing to note about that is not necessarily that the 1s and 9s could go in either of those squares, it's to note that none of those squares can contain a 1 or a 9. Now in the app you'll be able to highlight that with X's, but in our software at the moment we don't have the ability to enter in letters, so I'm just going to use green to indicate cells that cannot contain 1s and 9s. Now if we use the 1 itself in the middle, you can see we need to put 15 between the 1 and the 9, so 15, the minimum we need therefore is a 7 and an 8, which would be 2 cells, so we can definitely extend 2 cells in either direction there and enter green cells like that. 11, what's the minimum number of cells we need to make 11? Well, that's going to be 2 cells, so again let's highlight 2 cells in that way. Okay. Now, this 30 total here. So again, let's think about the maths. So 30 needs to lie between the 1 and the 9. So 30 plus 1 and 9 is equal to 40, which means I need a cell or cells summing to 5 to be outside the sandwich. Now, if we think about that, it would be possible, therefore, for this cell to be a 1 or a 9, if this one was as well, because that would give us 2 cells outside the 1 and the 9, and we could make these 2 cells a 2 and a 3. But again, it's never possible for there to be a 1 or a 9 in any of those central cells, because there simply wouldn't be enough room. Let me show you. If I put a 1 in here, and I put the 9 as far away from it as I can, let's put it there, then what's the maximum I can make these 4 yellow squares add up to? It's going to be 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5. Now that adds to 26, but I need the sandwich to add up to 30. So that tells you that it's never going to be possible to have a 1 or a 9 in these central squares. So let's highlight those in green. And in fact, this 27, something similar going on, isn't there? Because let's show that one again. Oops. 1, 9, we've just done it. We need this, the maximum we can make this is 26. So again, we're going to be able to put green cells in the middle. And there we get our first digit we can enter, because the last column has 3 as the sandwich. So given that we can't use a 1 as the contents of the sandwich, we now know there must be a 1 or a 9 here, a 1 or a 9 here, because we know that this box has got to have a 1 and a 9 in it. And in between that 1 and 9, there must be a 3. So that 3, I guess, should be green, technically. And we can enter in the rest of this column as green. Now, 21, what's the minimum we could make 21 with? It would have to be 8, 7, and 6. So this cell has to be green. 14 could be just 6 and 8 if we put that in here. So, now look, this 33 total now. If we look at where the gaps are, where have we not got green cells in this row? This square must be a 1 or a 9. And therefore this square is the 1 or the 9. And this square is a 2. Because we know, obviously, 45 minus 43 is 2. Now those 2 squares must be green. And, here's something cool. Let's imagine that this square was a 1 or a 9. Let's make it a 1, just to show you. Now, we've got a 30 total. So the 9 would have to go here. It has to go as far away as possible. These 2 cells would have to add up to 5. But they no longer can, because we've got a 2 in the box already. So we cannot put a 2 and a 3 into these squares. So actually, this little square here cannot be a 1 or a 9. Therefore, this square is a 1 or a 9. And the sum in row 9 is a 2. That must be just a single 2 in the grid. That means this square is a 1 or a 9. All these squares are green. This square must be green because we've got an 8 total. So there's a 1 or a 9 in one of these two cells. And if we look at this 23 total in the central column, that square must be green. This square must be green because 23 must be at least 4 squares. So that means that square is a 1 or a 9. You can see we're starting to build up a picture of what the 1s and the 9s look like. Now 19 must be at least 3 cells for the sandwich, so this square is green, and that means that one's a 1 or a 9. Oops. 23 must be at least 4 cells, so again we can enter in a lot of green cells there. The maximum, obviously, we can make 3 cells would be 8, 7 and 6, which is only 21. So there must be a 9. There must be a 9 in one of these two squares. I don't know which square it's going to be in, but obviously that resolves that this must be a 1 and this must be a 9. Let's add that in case it's useful. Yes, now this 21 total in row 6, if I put the 1 there, obviously these squares would have to add up to 35 because there would be nothing outside the sum. So this must be the 1. These two squares have now got to sum up to 14, which means 14 in 2 squares must be 6 and 8. This square cannot be a 9 because we need 16 between the 1 and the 9. And as we know, there's a 9 in one of those two squares, we can add the green there. This square must be the 9 in this 3x3 block. That resolves lots of things. Look, now we're starting to work out how the 1s and 9s interact around the grid. We can fill in all of these squares as green. We can fill in this square as green because 16 can't be 2 squares. If we try and make these two squares equal 16, the only way of doing that would be with a 7 and a 9, and then I'd have to put another 9 here to close the sandwich, so there'd be a repeated 9 in the column, so that's not possible. So there's a 9 in one of these two squares, and there's a 1 in one of those two squares. Now one thing, a little advanced tip that I know at points like this, is that we don't have a 0 in either this 16 row or this 7 row. So the 1s and the 9s here must be offset. They must lie on diagonals. They're either going to be here and here, or here and here. And sometimes that little sort of X technique can be useful. Now, there must be a 9 in one of those two squares. So again, that's quite cool, isn't it? Yes, in fact this helps because now, obviously if this square was a 9, this will be a 9. So actually there's sort of a triple arrangement. The possible arrangement of digits along in these 6 cells, if that's a 1, that will be a 9 and that will be a 9. And if this is a 1, that will be a 9 and that will be a 9. So we get this sort of diagonal propagation, and you can see that actually helps us to resolve which of these is possible, because in each of those examples there was a 1 cell gap either in row 2 or row 1. Now if there's a 1 cell gap in row 1 like this is not possible because this cell would have to add up to 16 on its own. Well, that doesn't work, so it must actually be this way round. And that ought to, I think, finish the 1s and the 9s relatively easily. This square here, it now must be a 7. All of those squares are green, as is the 7 itself, I suppose. 16 must be 3 squares, so let's put in all those as green. There must be a 1 in one of these two squares, and there's a 1 at the bottom there, so that square is a 1. That means this square is green, this square is a 9, this square is a 3, this square is a 1, that square is a 9, and there we have it. So that's how to do the first bit. Now, let's make that green, otherwise my OCD will kick in. Right, so now we've got to do the rest of it. How are we going to do that? And normally there'll be a few digits that you can pick off here as a result of the sums. So let's just check whether we can get anything easy. Yeah, this 14 in 2 cells, that's going to have to be 6 and 8. We've done the 3, we've done the 7. 6, 19. Ah, now this is an 8 total down here, so that one can't be 8. That's going to have to be 6, 2, and 8 like that. 23. Ah, this is an interesting one. 16, sandwiched between the 1 and the 9. We've already got a 7 in there. So these 3 cells have to sum up to 9. Now the only way of doing that is going to be 2, 3, and 4, because obviously we can't use a 1, because the 1 forms part of the sandwich. So this now is 5, 6, and 8 at the bottom. These 3 squares are 3, 4, and 7. 15 in 2 cells. These 2 squares must be 7 and 8. And you can see there's an 8 in one of those 2 squares. So in fact, that must be 7 and an 8 in that order. There's now an 8 in one of these 2 squares, which I'll put it in. I'm not sure it's going to be terribly useful. I've been solving some anti-knight puzzles today as well, so I was just looking at this 7 and thinking, oh, there can't be a 7 here, but obviously they can. Sevens like that. This 23 is nice, isn't it? Yes, it is nice, because that means that we've only got 2 cells outside the sandwich. Those 2 cells must sum up to 12. The reason I get 12 is 45 minus 1 minus 9 minus 23 is equal to 12. So these 2 squares sum to 12 without using a 9, without using an 8. So they must be 7 and 5. And given that we know the 7 is in one of those 2 positions, that actually resolves where it goes. It must go there. Okay, so what else are we left with there? 2, 4, and 6 into this box. There's a 2 here. These 2 squares must be 4 and 6. That's nice, because now we've got these 2 squares needing to add to 13 without using a 6. Can't use a 9 either, so they must be 5 and 8, and there's an 8 there. Now there must be a 5 in one of those 2 squares by simple Sudoku, and a 5 in one of those 2 squares for the same reason. This 30 total, these 2 squares have got to sum up to 5. They must therefore be 2 and 3, and in fact we know the order. It must be that way round. This square now must be a 3 because of these 3's. And you can see when I place the 3 here, I'm taking the place of an 8. So that means I can get the 8 as well. This can't be a 3 down here. This 27 means this is an 8 at the bottom. That means that's not an 8. That resolves the 8, 6, look. Resolves this 8. Must be a 6 in one of those 2 squares. Let's put that in. This 3 here sees that 3, and that means this one must be a 3. We know one of these squares is a 3, but these 2 3's tell us which one it is. Now there must be a 3 in one of those 2 squares because of these 3's. 2, 2, 6, 6, 5, 3, 9. If we look at this column, this square we can write in. That's going to have to be a 7. Means that's not a 7. One of these 2 squares must be an 8. Now this 11 total here with a 2 and a 4 there means this square must be a 7, because if we make that a 2, that's going to have to be a 9. So let's put that in, 4 and 7 like that. That means that's a 7 at the bottom there. These two squares must be 2 and 5, which is now resolvable. That means that's a 4 and that's a 2. 4. These two squares should be 5 and 6, which annoyingly isn't resolvable yet. Except it is because of the sum, look. Because we know these 4 squares here must sum up to 23. We've already got 17, so that's going to be a 6. That's a 6, 6 and 4 like that. This should be a 4, I think. These two squares need to be 5 and 7. And so we need to put 5s in there. Okay, so we're doing well. I don't think we're going to be too long before finishing this, hopefully now. Let's just try and spot the next digit. You can see this 6 means that's a 6 because of the 6 over on this side. We need 2, 3 and 4 to complete this box. That's a 4. This must be a 2 and a 3, which must be like that. There's a 3 in one of these two squares. Now we need 4, 5 and 6 along these squares here. 6, 3, 8. Done the 11. We need to put a 2 into one of those two squares. We can do that. 2, 5. And 4, 6, 7 down here. So this is a 4, 7 pair, and we have a 4 there. So 4, 7. Now this must be a 7, I think, because that's a 7 and a 5. This should be a 6. And 3, 4. This is a 3. This is a 4, 5 pair. The 3 helps us with the 3, 8 look. 3, 8. That must be an 8 now. And you can see actually we're building up to one of these classic finishes of one of these puzzles. There we go. So you can see here that in an ordinary Sudoku this would be a uniqueness problem, because these 4, 5s and 6s would all be interchangeable basically. But here, because of the sandwich Sudoku, we're going to be able to resolve it by using one of these totals. So let's use a 19. So we know these 3 cells sum to 19. These 2 must therefore sum to 11. The only way with these combinations is going to be with 6 and 5. 6, 5, 6, 4, 4, 5, check. And that's how to do sandwich Sudoku. In fact, that's how to do one of our sandwich Sudokus. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, do consider buying the app. We really appreciate it, and we really think you'd enjoy it. It's got amazing reviews so far, and it's been an absolute delight to get all the feedback we've been getting. So thank you very much for that. We'll be back soon with another edition of Cracking the Cryptic.